Good morning, you guys. How are you? Thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. You guys all set to go?
We think so.
All right. How's your life, first of all?
Uh, Crazy times, yeah, but we're surviving.
Yeah, the pandemic's crazy, right?
Yeah, I'm ready for it to be over.
Yeah, really? Nah,
Yeah,
I'm loving this, man. I just want it to go on and on and on. No, I'm only kidding. Yeah, it's horrible, man, for
I
everybody.
think, I mean, the way our lives are going, I could go this way just because we have to, but more worried about the girl upstairs.
Yeah, how old is she now?
She just turned 18 on Monday.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Congratulations. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
yeah,
She's ready to vote, so.
yeah.
Oh, even better. That's right. Outstanding. Excellent. Okay. Well, let's do this, and then we could chat a little bit more at the end too, if we'd like to. So, if you would, if you'd introduce yourselves and who you are, and where do you live, and what kind of work do you do?
Well, I'll go first. I'm just going to say that I'm Laurie Husted and live here in a house in the woods by a pond. Um, and in terms of work and volunteering, they kind of go together. I'm in the sustainability field, which often requires a little bit of elaboration. So I sometimes give people the super shortcut of I work in the three E's, where it's the environment, the economy, and social equity. So it's kind of a perfect space to be working and volunteering in.
So I'm Roger Husted, and I practice as an ophthalmologist here in the Hudson Valley, in both Rhinebeck and Kingston. And our home is located in the beautiful village and town of Red Hook, New York, in Dutchess County.
Wonderful. So nice to meet you guys. And how long you guys live where you are?
Now I got to count on my fingers.
3 years,
No.
yeah,
Ah, three
We-
years. That's
I've been
great.
in
That's
Red Hook
great.
for,
about 20 years.
right.
You've been a Red Hook for 20 years, and you've been in this house for 3 years. That's wonderful. And so we like to start with why. Why did you guys move to clean energy?
Well, I will go first again. I think that it's just very much in keeping with my philosophy on life and my education and sort of this tree hugger beginning that I might have, and that was sort of capped off with a business degree and realizing that both things can go together. And we need a clean energy future from both the natural perspective and the business world. And so that's philosophically why it's everything I'm interested in and want to work on.
So I think it's just the obvious choice as we move into the future, to do something like we did, and I see clean energy as, freedom and safety and a better future for our kids and their kids. Hold on, Ron, we lost you.
Whoops. Thank you very much. And tell us a little bit about the things that you guys did. What kind of systems did you put into place?
So yeah, we systems wise, I'll go to Roger, but I'll just say connections wise, we're buying green energy from our town, I guess, because we had some enabling legislation here in the town of Red Hook that allows us to buy from default to buying clean energy. And the jargon, community choice aggregation, CCA, because we love our acronyms. It lets us get clean green electrons or their equivalent. The other, I guess, for the nuts and bolts of it, I guess, go ahead, Raj, on what we're doing in the house.
Sure. So we did several things, starting with solar energy. We went with ground mount solar installation in this house, which we might talk about a little later. And then also we did our best to build a house that was well insulated and tight, in the sense of, not a lot of leaks, and windows that were tightly sealed, and ways to keep the warm air that we spend a lot of money warming and the cool air that we spend a lot of money cooling in our house longer. And then used things like electric heat pumps, and then also we both now drive electric cars.
Wonderful. So you have solar that supplies the majority of your electricity, powering up a very efficient house that you guys built that you made very tight, weatherizing wise. And then you have air source heat pumps. Is that what you have? Air source heat pumps, which are basically air conditioners that go both ways, heat and cool. And then electric vehicles as well. Pretty sweet. So you guys wiped out like 98% of your carbon and greenhouse gas emissions, eh?
Well, we'd like to think so. Yeah,
And then
maybe
for the
we had maybe a few more solar panels would have been nice, but we went with what we could do and we built. So
Yeah, no, that's great. Oh, so you guys are you're paying a little bit for electricity, and that's the green electricity you're buying from the Community Choice Aggregation Program.
right.
Wonderful. And so, how did you guys choose who was doing what for you? Did you go through an RFP process? Did you vet somebody? How did you wind up choosing like what to do and who to do it with?
So why don't you talk about Christy because we went with we went with her to start with.
Sure. Yeah, the all important choice of who you work with, and we were trying to find someone who spoke the same language we did in terms of wanting to do right by our pocketbook and the planet, and balance those two things. And so we found a local architect who also happened to be in my book club and also happened to be a friend. Do you work with friends? Yeah, you can. It turned out to be a really great dynamic and relationship, because we were pointing in the same direction. She kept encouraging us to, not build too big. Like the best thing you can do is build less space, right? And figure out some optical illusions with long, diagonal lines and stuff. So it feels spacious, but you don't have that extra square footage to heat and cool.
Yeah, I mean our home is essentially no bigger really than the one we started in 20 years ago, but it feels a lot bigger.
How many square feet is it? How many bedrooms and such?
So we have around 2,300, I believe, square feet, and technically three bedrooms, and then one room that could be used sort of as an office, a bedroom, a spare room, whatever you want to call it. So
She had a special word for it, though. What was it? Oh, the away room.
it's an away room, yes, yes. We use it as an office, but we built a Murphy bed, and so it's a great guest room too.
Oh, fantastic. And you guys wind up getting a lot of incentives while you were doing this? Do you know whereabouts the incentives were or
That goes back to the contractor, the choice of our contractor, sort of how we did it. Maybe Raj wants to talk about that.
So
yeah.
the incentives that were the easiest to do were, of course, the solar energy credits, which at the time were still relatively generous. I think those have faded a little bit from the federal standpoint, but we were able to take advantage of that. And then we did get some small rebates because of some of the appliances we chose, like a hybrid hot water heater. And the heat pumps had some rebates available as well.
Excellent. And then on the cars too, you got some, right?
Absolutely, yes. Both cars that we purchased happened to be from manufacturers that still had credits available. Laurie drives a Chevy Volt, and I drive a Hyundai Kona. So we actually did very well with both of those vehicles, actually.
Excellent. Outstanding. Outstanding. So did you calculate at all like sort of what your return on your investment was by going green versus doing what you might have done otherwise or
Well, I saw this. I see this question. It's a tough question to answer, only because it's hard to know sort of what your baseline is when we built from scratch. So I feel like we did what we did because A, it was the right thing to do. B, it was a good investment in the long run. And we think about this house as something that's going to be here for 100 years or maybe longer. And so the lifetime costs of this house being here is more than just what we spent up, in the beginning. It's what's going to get spent over its lifetime. And we'd like to think that we're going to be coming out way ahead after we've been here for 20 or 30 years than if we had gone with something more traditional.
And we talked about the difficulty of sort of carving out. It would be one thing if we were just telling you how much it costs to heat and cool our house and power the lights with our electric bill. But once you're generating from the sun and, getting your powers charged by the sun, it becomes a more complicated question. But, every time, my daughter has an errand, I'm like, take my car, it's okay, it's okay it's okay to drive. It's okay to, turn on your lights when so much of it is coming from El Sol.
And we did some things in the planning stages to give ourselves options for the future. Our ground mount solar was actually some distance from the house, and in a more traditional setup, that would have actually fed right into the power line on the street, and then we would have taken power off the pole, because we were not an off-the-grid house, but we actually switched that around and brought the solar panels energy into our home first, so that in the future, if we decide to add some batteries as either backup or a way to, sort of balance our energy needs throughout the day, we could do that.
Outstanding. So right now, the just FYI, the Nissan Leaf is the only vehicle that does this right now, where it will enable you to not only charge your electric vehicle, but discharge and use your electric vehicle as a battery to supply your house. By next year, there's supposed to be a couple other versions that are coming out from all different manufacturers, and eventually everyone's going to do it. But the interesting thing is, by next year, if you decide at some point to go for a Nissan Leaf, you can get extra hardware and software, and that electricity from your vehicle can carry you home for 5 days on an average home, which is pretty incredible. And then it takes you out of the stationary storage stuff, which is just an interesting thing that people are just starting to find out about. So
fascinating. Well,
Yeah.
pretty cool, right?
We are driving these big batteries around.
Right, exactly. That's exactly it. They're very powerful batteries, and they have to be responsive. So the interesting thing is that first, you can run your house off of them when you do have a power failure. And then secondly, as the electric vehicle market progresses, they'll be able to take these batteries and use them for the stationary storage, because they don't have to be as performance-wise as you do in a vehicle. So it gives you a secondary market for them. But I thought that would be an interesting thing for you guys.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, right. So lessons learned, like what would you do differently if you did anything, from the beginning again?
I don't know. Well, from my perspective, it's we were trying to decide where to site our garden, and it put me in mind of the fact that we did have to put the solar panels pretty far from the house because of our wonderful trees. So the choice of the added expense to put the solar, not on the roof but on the ground, and preserve this forest. I wouldn't change that, and I'm glad we didn't, clear cut to give that sun access. That we were able to, make that choice, because these trees are keeping us cooler in the summer and doing the good things that nature does. So I think you had a lesson learned, though.
Yes. So when we chose the off-the-shelf options to heat and cool our home, which we decided to go with an air source heat pump, which at the time seemed like a good value in terms of balancing what we wanted to spend on insulating the home, and also ground source heat pumps were an expensive option for a small house like ours. So we chose those. The problem is, when we built our home, the building technique that we used, it made it difficult to figure out how big heat pumps we needed and how many heads in the home that we needed, because our house was sort of a little bit unique. And I can talk about the construction of the house if that's pertinent, Ron.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So we used sort of off the shelf, again, zip sheathing on the outside of the house with rigid foam insulation as part of its structure. And that created an actual sort of continuous envelope of insulation around the whole home without studs acting as heat sinks between the wall and the outside. And then inside the walls, we used spray foam insulation. And when I went online to do some of these sort of basic calculations to figure out like how big of a heat pump we needed, a lot of those online calculators don't really have building envelopes quite like ours. They have more traditional ones. So it was a challenge to sort of go through those, and I went through those on my own because our builder wasn't that familiar with them, and our architect was somewhat familiar, but again, we were all kind of learning together. So that was a big challenge, and we probably made a couple of mistakes in terms of inside the house. You have to choose how many head units you want and where you want them. And I had read stories of homes that have big open spaces that have one head unit, in a whole house, super tight houses, even more insulated than ours, like up in Vermont. And then I I went with what we thought we would need, and it turns out we probably went with at least one too many because there's one that sits in our home that we never turn on.
Oh gosh, but
Good story. Good
yeah,
story.
that's an interesting thing. So, is the lesson that the industry, both the architects and the builders, kind of still need to get up to speed on some things?
I think to some degree that would be helpful because they're doing it day in and day out, and they're certainly better equipped to answer these questions than the homeowner would. And I have to think that many homeowners would not have wanted to go into the detail I went into. It's tedious, it's boring, and if you're not an engineer, it was really not that much fun to do. But I learned a lot doing it.
Well, being that you're a doctor of ophthalmology, clearly you got some skills there, Roger, that I'm sure were relatively easy to transpose over to some things. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's true. Okay, well, that's fascinating. What do you know what you're spending now per year on all your different energy sources now that you got the solar, which is paying, it does whatever it does. Did you bought the solar outright, I take it, or?
We did, yes.
So, okay, so that's done. You're not paying a monthly on that, and your electric over the year about
I mean,
is
it's funny. I don't know this off the top of my head, but that is our only energy bill, by the way.
right. Yeah,
We have no
exactly.
combustibles in the home, no propane, no nothing. It varies throughout the year. In the dead of summer, I think the last electric bill I got was $80, which is probably mostly just a connection charge to have us on the grid.
Yep.
Then in the dead of winter, I believe we had a bill last year, which is 2 months because it's Central Hudson. I think it was the worst case scenario was like 600, maybe $700.
Oh, that much, huh? Oh
It's
boy.
2 months worth.
And we're charging our cars.
Yeah, and we're
And you're charging the cars, yeah.
charging cars, heating the home with a heat pump, and we had a pretty cold winter where maybe this was the winter before where it was that high, but temperatures dropped down into the low single digits for a couple of weeks on end, and the heat pumps do struggle a little bit when you get down that low. They become a little less efficient. I think our sort of average daily temperatures around here they're pretty much great for, but when you drop down into the low single digits or minus temperatures, their efficiency falls off pretty rapidly. But I think it's a balancing act.
And we have a wood burning fireplace. So the good and the bad of that is we have lots of downed trees to burn, right? But it's also another hole in the house. So when we think about that nice envelope, right, there's a few holes in the envelope that make the house a little less efficient. And fireplaces are one. Each bathroom gives you another hole in the house. So, if you're trying to get a really super efficient house, you have to take away sort of that secondary heat source or
Right.
go down to one bathroom. And so there are these trade-offs that we have.
But I can tell you one story if we have time is when we lost power here for 5 days, not last winter, but the winter before. And we did have another place to stay because we don't have a generator large enough to heat the home with our heat pumps and our hot water. But I did come back several times, and after the second day or third day, and temperatures were in the 20s, the house's internal temperature only dropped down to about 65.
Wow.
And by the fourth day, it was down into the low 60s. I came and built a fire and spent one evening here, heated the house back up to about 78 degrees, and that's pretty much as bad as it got.
Wow. Fantastic.
That speaks for what the building was doing for us.
Yeah, no, nice tight building holds the temperature, right? Which is great. So that's amazing. Fantastic. So it seems like pretty much for all your electricity, your heating, cooling, and car charging, it's maybe like $100 or $150 on the average a month for everything, right?
Yeah. And I can
Right.
get that number to you, Ron. I'll look that up.
If you don't mind, that would be great. Just to have it for folks, that'd be fantastic. All right. Well,
Cooking too.
Oh, cooking.
Don't forget.
oh yeah, cooking too. That's right. Yeah, because you have electric appliances, right?
Yep, an induction stove works amazingly. I never thought I could cook without gas, and
It's great.
it's terrific.
You like that induction stove, huh? I heard good things about them. I don't have one yet myself, but I still have. I'm all electric as well, but my stove was the one I came with, so I got to upgrade at some point to the induction one. So it's good to hear
Pretty
that you're
nice.
liking
Pretty
it.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, what's next for you guys? You think?
So I am into this new issue, partly through my work at at Bard College as the sustainability person into refrigerants and sort of the greenhouse gas pollution that leaking units represent. So I'm kind of curious, actually, what the operations and maintenance is on these home systems and the kinds of refrigerant gases that are in them. So I just went and looked at our unit, and it's 410A, which has a global warming potential of 2,000 times, whatever the CO2. So yeah, it's something just professionally and personally I want to figure out, is that an issue in a home? And so I have a lot to learn on that front. But very practically, Roger's finishing the basement.
Yeah.
Putting up some more insulation.
Yeah, that's our next plan. We need our COVID isolation space just in case.
Quarantine room, huh?
Our quarantine room, yeah, right. Yeah, that was not in our budget when we finished the house initially, so we've been slowly chipping away at that.
That's great. That's wonderful. One of the things I ask is if you had a quantum quote that you guys like that you'd like to share.
Well, one more thing I forgot that what's next for us was Laurie put down on our list to talk about were e-bikes.
Oh yeah, come on, spit it out. What's the matter with you? You forgot that?
Yeah, e-bikes. The only problem is I went outside this morning and it was like in the high 30s, and I'm thinking it's a chilly ride to work even in September, but we did give it some thought. We'll see.
Anything else you want to say about those e-bikes there, Laurie?
Well, I wanted to get a tandem e-bike, but I was rejected.
I don't think they make a tandem e-bike yet. So.
Who needs a tandem e-bike? I mean, if you're tandem, you got the other person that can pick up the slack. I mean,
your e-bike right there. Yes, right. Your motor. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Quantum quote?
Do you have one?
I don't have one, Ron. I'm not good at those.
I've got my super short one that Rachel Carson in Nature, Nothing Exists Alone, which, words.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yeah. In Nature, Nothing Exists Alone.
That's a great one. That's a wonderful one. Fantastic. Thank you very much. That's a great one. Well, that ends the short and sweet part of this. Would you like to go into the extended version? You guys got time?
Sure thing.
Yeah? Roger? You good? All right, great. Good. So let's go to the extended one. So what do you think for the average person? Is there one thing that you think that people really should know, but they don't usually, that you really want to make sure folks like a tool, a tip, a tactic that folks should really know about, but most people don't?
So, yeah, Laurie brought this up and we talked about it, is finding people who share your values. Like for us, it was the architect and even our builder who had some experience with building homes that were energy efficient, but I think he learned as much about this process as we did, and I think he was very open-minded and actually several times was able to come to the table with some ideas and products that we didn't know existed, and actually some of those made quite a bit of difference. And having somebody who was willing to think outside their comfort zone was actually a great experience.
That's a good one. So find somebody who's aligned with your values and headed in the same direction. And even if they don't know everything, at least they can jointly learn with you.
Right.
That's a great one. Thanks. Laurie, you look like you got something on your mind.
Well, yeah, it's less directly related to building this home, but it does tie in terms of the importance of relationships, and that, you have common ground with everyone. And by making those relationships work and investing in them, I would say our house was better, but life is better, right? So I think that generally is the advice I like to give.
Relationships are key, huh?
Yeah, relationships are key. And without, yes, there are some people that are going to be very hard to form those relationships with, but there is something, we have our common humanity with everyone, right? There's good in everyone, and keeping that in mind is important these days.
Yeah, really, very much important, and especially these days, no doubt. Great. So do you have a particular worst clean energy moment, either in the development of your house or any other time, that you'd like to share, that was a bad time, but then out of it came some lesson that you now apply to your lives?
Well,
Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, building this house, aside, it was his night and day, right? Well, not day because he was working, but it was a lot of Roger that got invested in this, and I thought we were gonna come out with this amazing product, which we have, but we spent a lot of time in it during COVID, and it's a wonderful place to be. But this little piece bothers me is, New York energy code is very strict, right? And we thought we were going to kick that energy codes, to the curb, like we were going to beat it by a lot. And when we did with we did the testing that's required to see what our numbers were, right? We didn't get like as good a number as we thought. So just to elaborate a tiny bit, you get a 0 to 100 on your house score when you do when you test out for energy code, and
it's a HERS rating.
It's a HERS rating, more jargon, but you want as close to 0 as you can get. And the average home gets a 70, which is terrible, right? And a new home often gets 30. And so and a passive house would be 0. And I think we came in around 20. I have to go look at the number. But we did everything we could do. Why? So that was a bad clean energy moment for me when I thought, how do you do much better than this? And that's when it sort of came to the fact that, well, we do have 3 bathrooms, right? So
2.5. But yeah.
Sorry, let's be clear, 2.5.
How many kids?
2 kids.
2 kids, 2 adults. Yep. And they're both girls, or
boy and a girl.
Boy and a girl. Oh, sorry about that. So yeah, 1 boy, 1 girl. Okay, 2.5 beds, huh?
I grew up with 1,200 square feet and 1 bathroom, and it worked out well. We had 1 bathroom and 6 of us in a house for a couple of years. That was okay. Anyway, yeah. So we've changed sort of what our minimum needs are in this world. But anyway, that was a long-winded way of saying I thought our house was tighter than it turned out to be. And part of it is a little bit of the math and how you calculate the ceiling and the basement and what goes into your denominator. So it's still a wonderful house and it's really efficient. But that number that I wanted to say, hey, we hit it, was a little different than I thought.
Yeah, I think we also learned that doing a lot of the things we do is not inexpensive, and you have to be willing, and in our situation, we were fortunate enough to be able to make some choices up front that I think in the end will save us money, but not everybody may have the luxury of those choices. And a lot of this technology is not inexpensive. It's, and doing things like net zero homes becomes actually, in some cases, I thought prohibitively expensive. So I think for the average person out there who might think about doing this, or even just not even building their own home, but purchasing something that's been built, it's hard to keep costs down to the point where they're reasonable and affordable. I think that's a challenge that maybe the industry has to do a little better at.
So what was your biggest surprise on the cost side?
Well, just the square footage cost to build with these types of windows and the insulation materials and even stuff that's off the shelf. It's not inexpensive. And of course, labor is always an issue in the building industry, and that's something that does fluctuate quite a bit. But building costs have gone up even since we built our home 4 years ago, probably 20 or 30% on a square footage basis. And that's just not even building quite to the same standard we did.
Our architect had some really nice tricks that I mentioned before with using diagonals and such, but
right.
Also the bump outs, right? So the way, as she said to us, a box is best, right? But that's not maybe as beautiful, right? The box foundation.
Right.
But she managed to keep it as squarey as possible,
right?
Squarey, but did bump outs that were not part of the foundation. So, giving you the illusion of this extra space and
right.
the beauty of the lines without using, and keeping costs down. So, did a great job.
Yeah, the so windows and insulation kind of like too that were a little surprising. It sounds like.
Spend a lot of money in a short period of time without and not have that many windows to show for it. And windows are challenging too, because every window, as green as it is still not anywhere near as good as an insulation as a wall. But nobody wants to live in a windowless box.
Right.
Not good for your soul or good for your mind.
Right, and natural daylighting so key. So absolutely. So,
Exactly.
but yeah, it's a big heat loss or a cooling loss depending upon the time of year for the windows. So okay, interesting, fascinating. Thank you. All
And
right.
just
What?
because we're getting into the nitty gritty, one of the really important moments was we were part of like an enhanced energy review from NYSERDA, and that required the building inspector from Red Hook to come in and look a little more deeply than he would have otherwise when the walls were open. And so he was able to, together with the inspector, point out some spots where we needed some more insulation. So we could have closed up those walls and had those gaps and never known, right? So it's really important all along the building process to make sure you buy the product you want and it's installed the way you need it to be installed,
For it to work correctly.
and then it will work, to work correctly. So
So even though you had a good architect and a good builder, it was still really important for you guys to keep an eye on what was being done because people miss stuff.
right.
They're human. We're all human, right?
We're all human, right? Everybody makes mistakes. So yeah, that's a great tip too, right there. Thank you. All right, an aha moment.
Let me check our notes. Hold on.
No worries.
I gave the aha to you, but you sort of covered it.
I think I kind of covered my aha moment. Was just right. Our builder kind of showing up to the building site and saying, "Hey, look, I found this great product, and it's going to make Christie's design for your roof that much better." I think we were putting the roof system in place, and it was going to be rigid foam as well as a standard framed roof, and we were going to have to sort of jury rig it and kind of make it up on site, which would have required a lot of extra labor. And anytime you do something like that, room for more mistakes to be made. But he actually came with an off-the-shelf product that was used in commercial building, and he adapted it for our home and saved a ton of steps and was probably better than anything we could have sort of jury rigged here on site.
Nice, wonderful, cool. So
Not exciting, but we thought it was exciting.
no, it's very exciting, right? It was a new approach that your builder found that helped make things simpler and easier and more effective, right? So hey, that's a great thing. Wonderful. All right, the pulsar round. So these are short, succinct, amazing, and mind-blowing answers to these questions. So you guys ready?
Yeah.
Here we go. All right. All right. What's the best advice you've ever received?
I don't have an answer, but do you have one?
I mean, it's a small town, and I remember very few things from college, but I will always remember the all politics is local phrase. And that's been very true in this community and getting things done.
All politics is local. All right. Okay. One of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
I don't know. Maybe trying to learn from all of our failures that we've accumulated along the way. Try to do better every time we do something again.
I personally have found that, if I have something I want to get done, that I have to be willing to jump in a dumpster or,
Do it yourself.
just do, I mean, just getting the job done sometimes requires you to do things that you didn't expect to in the planning stage, and that's okay. All the things need to come together to make things happen, and so I don't know.
That's great. That's good.
Some of the things I've done to get the job done, but
Definitely not upset. Surprise.
That's wonderful. All right, an internet resource that you'd like to suggest that people check out.
Well, Roger, you're very functional with this one.
So I used sort of two main resources when we back to building the house again. Was Green Building Advisor. It's a great resource. It's a subscription service, but they have tons of fantastic resources for the builder, the home builder, the private person like us, architects and everybody. And then Fine Home Building was another great resource. They have a lot of forward-looking people that write some great stories about the whole process.
Wonderful.
And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the Environmental Voter Project right now. I think we found out in the last presidential election, 15 million individually identifiable environmentalists stayed home on election day. So this group, environmentalvoter.org, is working to change that, get those people who say they vote for the environment out to the polls.
Hey, look, we're living in a democracy, right? We're supposed to participate. That's the whole idea of America, right? Participation, democracy, yay! So yeah, it's amazing that people don't vote. So yeah, absolutely. All right, what book would you recommend? And
I'm always
why?
the fiction reader, so I don't know what Roger has chosen, but I chose The Overstory by Richard Powers. And in that case, harkening back to, the earlier thing that in nature, nothing, works alone. The trees tie together this series of short stories. So, good for everyone's attention spans, perhaps, and that we're not separate from nature. So.
I'm sorry, what was the second book?
So the purpose of the story, talking about how we are not separate from nature.
Oh, okay. The Overstory?
Our stories are intertwined. The story is the overstory.
The Overstory. And I'm sorry, it all went together into the Overstory. I just lost track for a second. Sorry about that. Okay, great. And Roger, any particular book for you?
I hadn't really thought of one, and then as I was sitting here, I just thought of an author that I read as a young person, and I think his stories still make sense today. In fact, maybe even more so than ever, and that's Edward Abbey, and books like The Monkey Wrench Gang.
Mm-hmm.
The Monkey Wrench Gang by Edward Abbey. All right, thank you. Okay, if you guys had a magic wand and you could change one thing in the entire world, what would it be?
I just think that we all need to comprehend our shared humanity. I would just wave that over the top, and then everyone will start to act for each other. So.
It's beautiful. Roger?
And that we all have to think about not just the short-term consequences of our decisions, but the long-term consequences of our decisions. Things that we're doing today are going to impact both us and our children and their children. It's not just what's going to make our lives better tomorrow and next week, but what's going to make all of our lives better forever.
And the legacy we leave behind us, right? So, yeah, no, wonderful points, guys. Thank you. What's that?
What would you want?
I think, well, part of it is absolutely compassion and realizing that, you know what, we're all human beings and we should care for each other because we really are just, one species on this planet, which is the whole idea behind Earthkind, right? So, it's not mankind, womankind, it's not this kind, that kind, it's all of us. We're all one, and I absolutely agree with you. That's a wonderful place to start because if we start to recognize that, we'd stop hurting each other as much as we do. So I think it's a great place to be, absolutely. And then your point, Roger, I think, what is it, the Native American piece, 7 generations, right? You always try to think ahead about what you're doing for the next 7 generations because it's not, we don't inherit what we got. We borrow it from the future, right, from our kids and grandkids. So that's a really, wonderful perspective. Okay. All right. WTF or F. So weather time fudge in an extreme weather event that you lived through and tell the tale, or weather time fun, the most fun you've ever had and the type of weather it was in the season.
So I went literal, I think, with the weather. As you did. I always make the choice, can I get to a meeting or work on my bike, right? And it's the Northeast, so sometimes there's weather. In this case, I think I managed to get to work on my bike and not realize the ride home would be so dramatic. I would say extreme weather with the lightning and the puddles and the this was a ride I did not relive for Roger, but planning ahead to make these green choices, I think you got to sometimes consider this. But I'm going to make an argument here for multimodal transportation, because if there had been, a bike rack on the bus at that time, then I would have had a choice. And if they ran frequently, I would have had a choice and have been safe instead of really thought that this was the end.
Oh my gosh, was that bad? Wow.
Oh, yeah. If I were an artist and could draw the lightning, but kudos to, I believe both our counties, Dutchess and Ulster County, they now have bike racks on the front of their public bus system. So they're moving in the right direction.
Great.
Well, my answer is not nearly as well thought out as hers, but So weather time events that just really impacted me. Well, Lori had sort of prodded me. She's like, "What about your home state?" And I grew up in California, and seeing what's going on there has actually been um, pretty discomforting to say the least. And it's going to impact things there for a long time ahead of us. And assuming that it's over, and it's not over yet because the fire season is far from done. And I have a father who lives not too far from one of those big fires, and we were talking on the phone the other night about whether he needs to pack a box and be ready to go at a moment's notice. Not really something that most of us think about, not around here at least. And then the other thing that I thought about was several years ago. I remember we took a vacation up to the Adirondacks one summer, and it happened to be that summer that a certain hurricane found her way up into New York State. And I remember the storm going the entire time we were driving up, and the first night that we were there, and thinking, well, this is a lot of rain. And then we spent the week, came back, and on our way home, the drive home was unbelievable because half the roads that we had driven on were either washed away, and some of the towns that we had driven by a week earlier weren't there. And it just sort of really hit home about how none of us are immune to these things, no matter where we are.
Yeah, and the more that the climate changes, the more extreme weather events we're going to be having. So here in the Northeast, we're getting the water and the big fluctuations in water, and then wind as well with tornadoes and hurricanes, unlike things we've ever seen before. And then, yeah, out in the West, you're absolutely right. I got family and friends out there too that are really scared. I mean, and personally, I'll take the water over fire any day.
Although
Fire
I have several patients who lost their homes during that hurricane season up in the Catskills. There were several towns that got wiped off the map up there, quite literally.
Yeah, no, it's really true. Either one is really scary. So, yeah, I mean, part of the idea behind this section is just to let people know that everyone's experiencing these things, and we should share those experiences and realize that they are impacting all of us all the time, and they're incredible. And we need to pay attention to them so we can do something about it. So, okay, what's the one thing you're most energized about today?
Here's where I put Ethan, Tessa, hoping the kids would walk by.
Yeah.
Of course, one of them's in Pittsburgh, so that would be hard.
Yeah, definitely a little difficult. He could hop online though.
I mean, I am excited for all the things in front of our daughter as an 18-year-old who's about to vote for the first time, and she was just asked to moderate a panel with one of the state senator candidates on environmental issues, right? So I think I'm excited at how much she's realizing that she has a voice and can use it to affect very soon now.
Roger?
Energized about. I'm just happy to see that the conversation that we're all having is including the problems that we're struggling with now with our environment and with social justice. And it seems like it's okay for everybody to talk about these things when in the past, when we were younger, it just wasn't even on the radar. So though we have a long way to go to solve these problems, yeah, I'm happy to see that they're being talked about a lot more, and that there's a lot of talented people working to fix these issues. And hopefully our generation will be even better. Our kids' generation will be even better at it than we were, because we have handed them some big problems to fix.
Yeah. Amazingly large, right? So, yep. But okay, hey, that's great. Thank you very much. So, yeah, the kids are the conversation and the kids themselves are just amazing. So, wonderful. All right, grand finale. So, a piece of parting advice, and if you want people to connect with you, that's the best way.
Oh, here's where I get to say that we all need to lift our voice in this great democracy of ours, and I'm very driven by getting federal legislation passed to put a price on carbon and put a check back in everyone's pockets. And so the best way to reach out to me is through that volunteering that I do for the Citizens Climate Lobby, the Mid-Hudson North chapter, and anyone who wants to figure out how to feel empowered to make a difference in this great democracy of ours. We're pushing forward from anything from writing letters to the paper to calling our members of Congress, and building relationships among the people who will tell our Congress people what's important. And we need a price on carbon. It's the best first step to solve the climate crisis, and we also need a bunch of other solutions. So
Great.
Speaks for us both.
he's a member.
Oh, he's a member. Uh-oh. Someone's coming down the stairs, too. Look
Yeah.
who's coming. Up.
Tessa, come here a sec. Tessa is also a member of the Citizens Climate Lobby.
Ah, the Citizens Climate Lobby. Hey, Tessa. How are you? Good. So we're doing a little interview with your family here about living in this clean, green, wonderful solar-powered house with heat pumps and electric vehicles. And they were just talking about you and how proud they are of you and all the things that you're doing. So how do you feel living where you are? And could you come a little closer to the microphone so people can hear you?
Yeah.
So how do you like living where you are and all the things your parents are involved with?
I love it. They've, always encouraged me to well, every time she's like, take the electric car.
See?
So, and I bike. Well, I bike to school. I mean, obviously that might not happen anymore because I'm not going, but yeah, I love our house, and the solar panels are great too.
She's even helped me move them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, the tilting. You got tilted ones, huh? That's great. Movable. Fantastic. And so you're going to be graduating this year? Is that it, from high school? Or
Yeah. I'm a senior.
That's great. You excited?
Yeah.
What do you, any plans about what you think you'll do next?
I don't know yet. Been looking at colleges online. We've driven through some campuses. It's kind of depressing. There are no students there, but
Yeah, the pandemic is really crazy, right?
Yeah.
So you have any particular areas that you're thinking about focusing on, or?
well, maybe environmental science or biology.
Oh, gee, really? Wow. I wonder who encourages that. No, it seems like you're a natural too, huh? So if you had to suggest anything for other kids out there, what would you want to say as a piece of advice to them? Besides get born into great parents, I mean,
What?
Vote.
Vote. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah. I know I have a few of my peers who can vote now.
Once by mail and once in person.
Yeah, both times, right?
I mean, our president suggested it, so
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. I mean, I would say to my peers, just get your voice out there, to work for the change that we're trying to see now. I co-run the environmental club at my high school with one of my other friends, so we try to, encourage our peers to, do environmental biking and all that at school. So composting, we just put one in at the school too.
So be active and speak up, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. That's wonderful. Thank you so much.